The train from Lyon had pulled into Gare de Lyon just after dusk, the golden light of Paris melting into the blue of evening. Claire Dupont stepped down with her suitcase, her heart racing faster than the locomotive that had carried her here. She had not seen her son in almost 2 years. Letters had been sparse, calls even rarer, and when his message finally arrived inviting her to spend Christmas together, she could hardly believe it. The taxi rattled through narrow streets, past glowing cafes, and the sparkle of Christmas lights strung across avenues. When the car stopped before a handsome limestone building in the Marais district, Claire's hands trembled with excitement. She climbed the stone steps, her suitcase bumping against them, and pressed the brass bell. The door opened. A young man stood there, tall and lean, with the same eyes she remembered. Her voice cracked with emotion. "Jean, mon fils, it is me." But instead of the warm embrace she imagined, his brow furrowed in confusion. He shook his head slowly, his voice cautious yet firm. "I think you have the wrong house." Claire froze on the threshold. The words struck colder than the December air. For a moment she wondered if she had misheard. She clutched the strap of her bag as the glow from inside spilled over her, while the stranger who looked exactly like her son stared at her as though she were nothing but a stranger. The street behind her was quiet, the sound of distant carols floating faintly through the night. Claire's pulse hammered in her ears. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words would come. Claire stood frozen, her breath misting in the chill air. The man who bore her son's face kept his hand firm on the edge of the door, as if barring her way. His eyes, though eerily familiar, showed nothing but unease. "I am sorry, madam," he said softly, his Parisian accent clipped, "but you must be mistaken." Claire felt her knees weaken. "Jean, it is me, your mother. You asked me to come." The man blinked. For a fleeting second, something stirred across his features, recognition, perhaps, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He shook his head. The door began to close. Panic rushed through Claire's chest. She pushed forward, her suitcase scraping against the step. Inside, warm light filled the hallway, glinting off a decorated Christmas tree. A faint melody of carols played from a gramophone. For a heartbeat, she felt she had stepped into the memory of their family home. Yet the man who looked like her son barred her with cold certainty. "Leave, madam, please." Her throat tightened. Something was terribly wrong. Claire stumbled back into the narrow street, the heavy door shutting firmly before her. She stood alone in the Paris night, her suitcase by her feet, the Christmas lights above her swaying in the breeze. She turned once more towards the building, but the curtains had been drawn shut. Only her reflection stared back at her from the frosted windowpane. Had she been tricked? Had her son truly written the letter? She rummaged inside her coat pocket, pulling out the crumpled paper, the handwriting she had studied 100 times. Each curve of the ink belonged to Jean. She was certain of it. Her breath quickened. If the man was not her son, then who was he? And why would he deny her? She dragged her suitcase through cobbled alleys, her thoughts tangled. The familiar streets now felt menacing, shadows stretching long under the glow of lanterns. Somewhere in the distance, bells tolled from Notre Dame, but their sound only deepened her unease. She whispered to herself, "I am not wrong. I cannot be wrong." Seeking refuge, Claire pushed open the door of a small cafe. Inside, the warmth of roasting coffee and the soft hum of conversation enveloped her. She chose a table by the window, her trembling hands clasped around a steaming cup. Her eyes scanned the letter again. The invitation was clear. "Come to Paris. Spend Christmas with me. I miss you, maman." She knew her son's voice when she read those words. But the face at the door, the eyes of a stranger, still haunted her. A waiter lingered nearby, watching her with a curious expression. Finally, he spoke. "Pardon, madam. Are you all right? You seem unsettled." Claire hesitated, then confided in him. "I came here to see my son. He lives in the Marais. But when I arrived, he said he did not know me." The waiter frowned. Strange. Families are together tonight. No one would turn away his own mother. His words offered no comfort. only questions that deepen the night's mystery. Claire reached into her bag and pulled out a small framed photograph. It showed Jean at his university graduation, smiling with pride, arms slung around her shoulder. She showed it to the waiter. "This is him. Do you recognize him?" The waiter studied the image, his brow creased. Slowly, he nodded. "Yes, I have seen him. He comes here sometimes with friends." But his voice dropped. "He is called Mark, not Jean." Claire's chest tightened. "No. His name is Jean Dupont. He is my son." But the waiter shook his head firmly. "Non, madam. That young man is Mark Lefebvre. Everyone in the neighborhood knows him." The photograph trembled in her grip. How could her son have another name, another life? She clutched the picture to her chest as dread coiled deep inside her. Claire left the cafe, her mind reeling. Mark Lefebvre. The name echoed through her thoughts as she retraced her steps. The streets of Paris seemed to whisper around her, as though the very stones carried secrets. She recalled the flicker in the young man's eyes when she called him Jean. A spark of truth, buried beneath denial. Had her son built another life here, hidden from her? Was he ashamed of her? Or worse, had someone forced him into the charade? As she turned into a quieter lane, she caught sight of him, Mark or Jean, walking quickly across the square, a scarf wrapped around his neck. Without thinking, she followed. He moved with urgency, glancing over his shoulder once. Their eyes met briefly, and his face drained of color. He broke into a hurried stride, disappearing down an alley. Claire chased after him, her heart pounding, her suitcase abandoned in the square. The alley ended at a tall wooden door set into a crumbling stone wall. Jean, or Mark, slipped inside, the door slamming shut behind him. Claire reached it seconds later, but the handle would not turn. She pounded against the wood. "Jean, please, do not shut me out." Silence pressed in. The only sound was her ragged breathing. She pressed her ear against the door. Somewhere within, she thought she heard muffled voices. A man's tone urgent. A woman's reply sharp. She whispered his name again, her tears soaking into the old timber. But no answer came. Then, faintly, footsteps approached. She stepped back just as the lock clicked. The door opened a crack. A sliver of light fell across her face, and a shadow loomed inside. A woman stood there, her expression unreadable. She was elegant, with dark hair swept neatly back and eyes that glimmered with suspicion. "Who are you?" she asked coldly. Claire steadied her voice. "I am his mother." "Where is Jean?" The woman's gaze hardened. "There is no Jean here. Only Mark." Before Claire could answer, the woman's hand tightened on the doorframe. "You should not be here. Leave, before you make things worse." But Claire's foot wedged firmly against the door. Her desperation gave her strength. "I will not leave until I see my son." The woman sighed, a whisper of impatience. At last, she motioned for Claire to enter. Inside, the air smelled of dust and candle wax. The house was old, with narrow stairs leading up to an attic. The woman led her silently. Each creak of the floorboards heightened Claire's fear. At the top, she was ushered into a small attic room. There, on a desk by the window, lay stacks of letters, each one in Jean's handwriting. Her heart stopped. Claire rushed to the desk, her trembling fingers brushing across the letters. They were addressed to her, every one of them, but never posted. The ink bled with words unsent, confessions trapped in silence. She turned to the woman, her voice breaking. "Why? Why did you keep these from me?" The woman's face remained calm. "Because he chose this life. He chose Mark Lefebvre. He did not want you to find him." Claire shook her head violently. "That is not true. He would never abandon me. Not without reason." From behind her, a floorboard groaned. She turned, and there he was. Jean, or Mark, standing in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes haunted. For a long moment, neither spoke. The room was heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. Then he whispered, "Maman, you should not have come." Tears streamed down Claire's face. "Why, Jean?" Why do you call yourself Mark? Why pretend you do not know me? He stepped forward, his hands trembling. Because it is the only way to keep you safe. The woman's eyes darted towards him, sharp with warning. But Jean ignored her. They watch me. They know everything. If they knew you were my mother, they would use you against me. That is why I lied. That is why I became Mark Lefebvre. Claire's breath caught. Fear mingled with relief, and dread pressed harder against her chest. Who are they? She whispered. But before he could answer, the lights flickered. A heavy knock echoed from downstairs, rattling the old house. The woman's face blanched, and Jean's voice dropped to a desperate hiss. It is too late. They have found us.